back in 1998, the county began to consider building a new, larger jail. And we had a different board then, Board of Reps, and they were open to funding alternatives to incarceration instead of building a jail. And twice in the past 15 years, we've resisted expanding the jail, and the state gave us a variance about the supposed overcrowding that was leading to having to board prisoners in other counties. The state Corrections Commission is a very powerful entity that kind of dictates to the counties how big their jails need to be. And if your jail is not within those guidelines, then you financially are penalized pretty heavily.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the reasons why some of our larger goals are to resist the mandate at the state level as well, and also start making connections with other counties in upstate New York that are resisting similar expansions.
So I'd like to learn a little bit more about the current situation. What's the proposal that's on the table, and what's the significance of that?
Well, just to correct something that you said, it is $900,000 that is on the table right now, but expansions always cost more than the initial estimate, and it also doesn't, that also doesn't capture the fact that taxpayers are left with the annual maintenance cost annually. And I think that's something that's missing from the discussion in the local media as well.
What's also missing is the fact that this is really only stage one of a jail expansion. It's not being discussed, but there's a plan for more beds being put into the jail.
So, the idea is that the county wants to expand it by 7 beds because they board out an average of, I think they said 8 people, right? Mm-hmm. 8 people on a daily basis. And this would lower the cost of that, which averages almost $250,000 a year. We feel that they haven't properly explored alternatives, so we have asked them repeatedly, who is in jail, why, on what charges, and have you explored the alternatives? I think these questions were circumvented. We never got a sense that they knew or that they had discussed this fully, and we were left with having to find statistics on our own.
Yeah, it's interesting that their idea is let's expand the jail instead of let's see how we could lower down the population of the jail.
Exactly.
Approximately 60% of the people in jail are pre-trial. They haven't even been sentenced. They may very well be innocent, but they can't afford bail, so they're stuck in jail for a few months. Just correcting that problem would reduce our population enough so we wouldn't have to expand or board out.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's interesting that they're talking about boarding out in this way because we can reduce the population and stop boarding people out today. Like, not only is boarding out a total inhumane practice that should never happen, it separates people from their families and from their local resources. But it's also, by their own logic, it's costly. We don't have to do it. We can reduce the population and get around these financial problems that we keep hearing about from them.
So maybe we can talk a little bit about the factors that influence criminality in our society. So, these are, I just found these statistics that are based on some census data that I was very surprised to see that about 20% of the people that are living in Tompkins County are below the poverty line. The number of households receiving public assistance, there are 2.4% percent of households receiving public assistance, 23% of households are receiving Social Security, and 9% of households are receiving food stamps. But the 21% of people living below poverty level, at the same time, while Tompkins County regularly posts some of the best unemployment numbers in the state, I thought that was kind of interesting. But going back to the issue of influencing criminality, maybe we can talk a bit about the effects of poverty and inequality, also family situations, and also healthcare and mental health care situations, and how those factors are influencing criminality in our county.
Well, unfortunately, it's been a nationwide trend to criminalize social problems. So the problem of mental illness or drug addiction or poverty or joblessness, all of those things have become crimes now. But we could prevent crime instead of just reacting to crime. We could use some of that big pile of money to address and alleviate some of the problems people are facing that you just mentioned. And that would really greatly reduce incarceration.
I mean, it's also interesting that our local law enforcement seems to discuss criminality in relation to, quote, these hard economic times. We do have some statistics, some limited information about violent crime in between the years 2008 and 2012, and there does seem to be a significant reduction in violent crime rates. So that should indicate that there would be a reduction of the incarcerated population. It's also worth mentioning that the general population in this county has increased, while violent crime has decreased and incarceration has increased. That was very wordy. But in other words, as Joey was just saying, it's basically criminalizing poverty, and we want to contest the idea that punishing and controlling people makes Ithaca or any community safer. We think providing basic needs and resources is what secures communities.
And so, I guess, what are the kind of alternative plans that we're looking at? What sort of areas could we put this money in rather than building a hole to lock people up in? We could be, building other things, couldn't we?
We feel like money should be going towards the youth as far as like education, activities, community activities for people, and also towards the mental health issue. Like so many people who are thrown into the county jail are thrown there because they don't have like a great like mental health institution, here in Ithaca. So we feel like let's just like foster these into like the housing issue, like put this money into like the housing issues, which is really terrible here in Ithaca, and also in addition to education for the youth, community activities, funding for recreational sports, and also living wage, indeed.
There's been a lot of research over the last 30 years about how supporting young families, when a baby first comes home from the hospital, supporting the family and helping them to understand how best to raise the child, they look at those children and 20 years later, there's something like 60 to 70% less involved with criminal justice, just by getting a little support to the family at the beginning of their lives for a fraction of the cost of imprisoning them 20 years later. I just think we need as a community to decide how do we want to be, how do we want to approach, how do we want to cope with those who are vulnerable.
I mean, on that note, I think some of the news snippets you gave during the introduction were really interesting. Like bomb sniffing dogs at football games. Like we have a $1 million SWAT truck in our small county. These are not small chunks of change. These are things that can drastically improve, any of the areas that Kayla just mentioned.
During Tuesday's meeting, it was the Ithaca Common Council where they voted down the amendment that would have added 2 police officers to the Ithaca Police Department, and it was Savante Myrick who broke the tie vote, and he was quoted in the Ithaca Times as reminding the Common Council that Ithaca boasts a higher public safety budget than other cities of similar sizes, and lower rates of violent crime. And so I guess it certainly raises the question as to what's behind these interests that might want to be increasing the space where people should be held in jail. So I guess you were all at the meeting of the Tompkins County Legislature on Tuesday. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened there?
Well, last week was the meeting of the whole legislature. We came and a group of us voiced some of our concerns about the expansion plan for the jail and how come we didn't really know about it. So how come we hadn't had a chance to respond to it before they voted. Then this week we went to a meeting of the Public Safety Committee of the board, and that's the group that, you know, proposes these ideas and says why they're a good idea. And this time they seemed a little more interested in hearing us. One thing we requested was a public discussion or dialogue, not just this meeting in the boardroom where they're all seated at their chairs at a table and we can talk for a couple of minutes and then they talk and we can't question them. So we're hoping to have a community public forum.
I mean, something that we noticed right away is that, you know, between the podium where public input is given in 3-minute increments from our end, and between their roundtable discussion, there's an ocean. Like, it's really difficult for us to have a conversation in this way. This is the reason why, A, we asked to have a presentation so that we can actually have a better understanding of their rationale for the jail project, and B, also invited them to a meeting that we will be planning in the second week of December, where we'll invite a lot of people who are directly impacted by some of these policies, so that the education can be both ways, because we think it's very needed for them.
So I wanted to play the clip of what Martha Robertson had to say speaking to Jamie Hendricks of WRFI. So let's just play this.
This is Jamie Hendricks for WRFI. I'm now here with Martha Robinson, the chair of the Tompkins County Legislature. So, Martha, what happened here today?
Thank you, Jamie. This was our public hearing, our annual public hearing on our proposed 2014 budget and capital program for the next 5 years. So we heard mostly from people who were concerned about the plans in the capital program to renovate a small area within the jail and add 7 beds to the capacity of the jail. We've heard from folks for a couple meetings now. We're looking forward to a more open-ended community meeting that we will be scheduling in the next month or two, and people can look forward to the notice of that meeting, where we'll lay out all the information and give people a chance to interact more directly on this issue.
Thank you so much, Martha.
You bet. Thank you.
That was WRFI's Jamie Hendricks speaking to Martha Robertson on Tuesday. And then I also have a clip that Jamie got of Brian Robinson. He is the chair of the Public Safety Committee.
This is Jamie Hendricks in front of the Tompkins County Legislature Chambers with Ryan Robinson, the chair of the Public Safety Committee. Tell us a little bit about what happened here tonight.
Okay. It was a forum on the 2014 county budget. There were actually a couple of questions from the audience specific to the county budget, and the vast majority of folks were here relative to the jail expansion or reconfiguration, depending on the way you feel towards the project. But that's what we've been doing. At the end of the presentation, I informed the group that was here for the jail issue that probably the proper forum for a give and take discussion would be at a Public Safety Committee meeting, which we've tentatively agreed to be our regular meeting on December 9th. And I'm hoping to get the players from all the different disciplines which are part of this issue. You know, it's not just a county legislature issue. It's certainly the county sheriff, a member of the courts, members from assigned counsel. Yes, I'm sorry, and the different alternatives to incarceration programs, probation. It's not a simple issue, and I certainly can't speak to all of it, and wouldn't want to. So we will certainly take the time and present a real give and take, informative session, and we'll see how that goes. If we need to go further, then we will.
We look forward to this. Thank you very much, Brian, for your time.
No problem. Take care.
After that first meeting, last week when we all stood up and gave our 3-minute talks, then they each person, it seemed, around the table spent a long time insisting that they were concerned about the mass incarceration in the U.S. and what a disgrace it was. So yeah, we're on your side kind of talk. But then that really just seemed like political palaver to me.
I mean, to give you a short answer, no, I don't think anyone has, firmly given us like an indication that they favor our position. I do want to address something that was relevant to that clip. All of our comments were reduced to something non-related to the budget, which obviously we contest for reasons we've already discussed. And B, this renaming of this expansion as some sort of renovation project, which I think several members of the legislature are on board with. This is something that started at Thursday's meeting before and has continued since then. But we categorically reject that. It is an expansion. Space, their argument is that the actual perimeter of the space is not going to increase, but if the number of humans inside of the jail increases, it is absolutely an expansion, and we think humans are more important than space.
Another thing that was interesting, and he mentioned it, 2 men were there that night because it was talking about the county budget, and they wanted to talk about taxes and how they wanted them not to get increased. But those 2 men heard us speak first, and they were very impressed. You could tell they hadn't really heard much about the issue, and they understand that it costs a lot of money to incarcerate people, and that raises our taxes. So,
yeah. I mean, that is, I think, Joey, something noteworthy that even the most, inhumane capitalist can get on board for different reasons, just because these are such economically unintelligent decisions being made by our legislators.
And, nationally, I was interested to see when this jail expansion issue came up, because it was right after comments made by our Attorney General, Eric Holder, about the national situation of the prison population. He said, quote, "Too many Americans go to too many prisons for far too long and for no truly good law enforcement reason." This is Attorney General Eric Holder. He says, "We cannot simply prosecute or incarcerate our way to becoming a safer country." So, I think that the incarceration problem starts locally and, ends nationally. And so I think here in Ithaca, we pride ourselves on being a place with a lot of smart people. And so I guess, do you think that we have the capacity to be leading the charge on this front to reduce the prison population and the incarceration problem in our country?
well, I certainly hope so, but
Yes, we do.
Yes.
I've been trying to resist prisons in various forms on the state and the national level, and I agree with you that starting at a local level is a really good model, and Tompkins County could be a beacon, but it would take some changes in perspective. And it's funny that you mentioned the police force, because one of the things that's happened ever since 9/11 is the police forces have become militarized. That's why we have a SWAT van, and now drones are being used. So there's a lot of money for, that kind of criminal, quote-unquote, justice.
Okay, we just have about 60 seconds. What's your plan going forward, and how can people get more information?
We're going to continue to resist this expansion. I just want to say, if we're going to be some sort of regional leaders on this, we also need to reform our deeply discriminatory policing practices, not just the jail population. The coalition is going to continue resisting this expansion and getting together with other counties.
And what's your Facebook page?
It is?
Our Facebook page is Stop the Jail Expansion Coalition, Tompkins County.
Okay, thank you so much for speaking with us, Natalie, Joey, and Kayla.
Thank you.